One night at St. Mary's Hospital, a young doctor who had been working there for just over a month was finishing up his late shift. He had just completed an emergency surgery after a car accident, and by the time he changed out of his scrubs, it was past midnight. He worked on the fifth floor and needed to take the elevator down to the B1 parking garage to get to his car. As the elevator doors were closing, he heard hurried footsteps. Out of courtesy, he pressed the button to reopen the doors. A nurse stepped inside. Her face was pale, deathly pale. The doctor didn't think much of it, assuming she was just exhausted from another grueling night shift like himself. He didn't strike up a conversation. When the elevator reached B1, strangely, the doors didn't open. Instead, it continued descending. B2, B3, B4, B5. The doctor frowned. He had no idea the hospital had this many basement levels. At B5, the doors finally opened. He expected the nurse to step out, but she didn't. She simply stared ahead, waiting. From the distance, the doctor noticed another figure walking toward the elevator. Out of instinct, he pressed the open button. "Hold on," he said. "Someone's coming." "Let's wait for them." The nurse suddenly turned to him, her voice icy cold. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm letting them in," the doctor replied nervously. "Don't you see someone walking this way?" Her tone sharpened. "Close the door." The doctor frowned. "Why? Why not let them ride with us?" "Close the door," she snapped. Uneasy, the doctor reluctantly obeyed. As the doors slid shut, he muttered, "That was strange. Why wouldn't you let them in?" The nurse turned her head slowly. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Yes," the doctor admitted. "Just over a month." "Did you notice the wristband on that person?" The doctor thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I saw it." "Why?" Her eyes glinted under the fluorescent light. "That band is only worn by the dead, the ones sent to the morgue." The doctor's stomach dropped. He broke into a cold sweat. "Oh my God, thank you. If you hadn't—" Before he could finish, the nurse lifted her arm, revealing her own wrist. "Don't thank me," she said flatly, "because I'm wearing one too." Around the year 2000, I was in my third year of medical imaging school and had just started doing overnight rotations at a large hospital in the U.S. My group had 5 members, and I was the group leader, usually receiving instructions from the senior residents before passing them down. At the start of the shift, around 6 to 7 p.m., the ER was packed and things were chaotic. Since I specialized in radiology, the pressure on me wasn't as intense as for those directly assisting in trauma. As the night dragged on, patients needing X-rays, CT scans, or MRIs became fewer and fewer. One of the senior residents told me, "If there's a severe case you can't handle, call me. I'll be in the restroom next door. Otherwise, you're in charge tonight." I assigned 2 of my classmates to the CT room, 2 to X-ray, while I stayed at the front desk to handle records and receive patients. Past midnight, the halls grew eerily quiet. Exhaustion washed over me, and I leaned back in my chair, drifting into a light sleep. That's when I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, drawing nearer. Thinking it was just a patient coming in, I stayed in my chair. The footsteps stopped right at the main door. Then came a knock in a shaky male voice. "Doctor, please help me. I need an X-ray. I was in a bad car accident." Half asleep, I answered without opening my eyes. "Please wait a moment, sir." "I'll be right there." I put on my lab coat and walked to the entrance. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I brushed it off as the cold hospital AC and forced myself to breathe deeply. I opened the door, but no one was there. The hallway stretched out, empty, silent. A clock on the wall read 2 a.m. My chest tightened with unease. Still, I went back inside, shut the door halfway, and sat down again, staring at the entrance. Moments later, as sleep tried to pull me under again, the same footsteps echoed. This time, in my dreamlike haze, I saw him. A middle-aged man in a striped white shirt, blood soaking his sleeve, his temple swollen with a clot. He stood motionless, eyes locked on me. I asked, "Sir, do you need help? Have you been treated yet? Do you have any paperwork?" He didn't answer. Slowly, he turned and walked toward the corridor. Against my better judgment, I followed. The deeper I went, the colder the air became, my skin prickling with goosebumps. I saw him turn right at the end of the hallway, toward the morgue. Before I could decide whether to keep following, a classmate came through another door, waking me from what felt like a trance. I was drenched in sweat. Later, around 7 a.m., I left the hospital through a side exit that passed near the morgue. Two nurses were pushing a gurney covered with a white sheet. Curious, I asked if there had been a death overnight. One of them nodded. Yes, a car accident victim brought in around 1 a.m. The family is coming to identify the body. I froze. Blood had seeped through the sheet, staining the sleeve of a striped white shirt. It was him. Even after 2 decades, I still remember that night vividly. The man who asked me for an x-ray had already been dead. I grew up near a hospital, an old medical complex in Illinois built during the early 1900s. For most of my childhood, it was always crowded, day and night. The halls smelled of alcohol wipes, disinfectant, and the metallic tang of blood. But in recent years, the hospital was abandoned after the city opened a brand new medical center across town. The new place is modern and spacious, but it hasn't finished construction on its morgue yet. So every night, bodies from the new hospital are still transported back to the old abandoned hospital for storage. During the day, the place is unnervingly silent. At night, it becomes terrifying. The once busy wards now echo with nothing but the whistle of wind, the slam of rusted windows, and the faint static of radios carried by the night guards. The bravest of them all was Officer Mark, a security guard who had worked there for years. He admitted, "Back then, when the hospital was alive with people, I wasn't scared. But now, the silence is suffocating. Sometimes the steel doors screech open even when there's no wind. At night, I hear whispers, and I just turn up my radio and pray." One night around midnight, Mark and another guard were patrolling near the infectious disease wing, the section closest to the old morgue. Mark felt someone staring at his back. A strong metallic smell of blood hit his nose. Then behind him, a soft giggle. When he turned, he saw something that still haunts him to this day. A hospital bed, floating in midair, rocking gently. From it came the sound of weeping mixed with faint groans. His body froze, his legs refused to move. The bed suddenly crashed to the floor with a loud clang. Mark's partner, walking just a few steps ahead, turned around. But when Mark asked if he had seen it, his partner just shook his head and whispered, "No, nothing's there." Mark collapsed with fever the next day and refused to ever work night shifts again. But that wasn't the only story. A woman named Sarah, who stayed for weeks to care for her sick husband, described her own horrifying experience. At 2 a.m., while washing a towel in the patient restroom, she felt warm breath against her ear, yet no one was there. Then came the soft sobbing of a young girl from the last stall. When Sarah called out, the sobbing only grew louder, more despairing. She ran, but before she reached the door, she heard a heavy splash, as if something had been thrown into the water tank. Later that week, Sarah saw a pale young woman in a hospital gown sitting on an empty bed across the room, smiling faintly. But when she blinked, the bed was empty. That same night, the girl's face appeared outside the window, her skin tearing apart, blood gushing as she smiled with red, hollow eyes. Sarah never returned alone to that ward again. And then there was the murder. 2 years earlier, a nurse was found stabbed to death in one of the hospital rooms, 2 knives still sticking from her body. Police ruled it a homicide, but rumors spread quickly. Staff whispered that her spirit still wandered the halls, crying for justice. Several guards claimed to have seen her figure, hair disheveled, uniform bloody, sliding silently through corridors, or standing in the shadows near the pharmacy wing. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she vanished into thin air. Even today, locals say when you drive past this hospital at night, you'll feel a chill down your spine. And if you're unlucky, you might see her standing by the window, staring down at you, her lips moving soundlessly, whispering one word: justice. Last month, I got sick and had to be hospitalized for almost 2 weeks. The doctor said it would be better if I stayed in, so I checked myself in right away. The first night felt strange. 10 beds filled the ward, 5 on each side. My bed was at the far left corner, right next to the restroom. It was flu season, so every bed was taken. At 10 p.m., the nurse turned off the lights. I lay under the blanket, half asleep, when a thought crossed my mind. I wonder if this hospital is haunted. And what if I actually see something tonight? I chuckled to myself. Whatever. It wouldn't be the first time. And then it happened. 10 minutes later, a low moaning sound echoed through the dark room. Uh, um, like a death rattle, like something from a horror movie. My heart jumped. Others stirred too, whispering, trying to figure out where it came from. I turned toward the old lady in bed 3, still fast asleep. Then the woman next to me began to twitch and groan. Her face was pale, almost bloodless. I touched her arm gently. She bolted upright, eyes wide. And the first thing she asked wasn't about herself, it was about her mattress. "Hey, where did you get this mattress? You changed mine earlier, right?" The woman across from her said, "Yeah, I grabbed it from the hallway this afternoon." "Why?" The groaning woman trembled. "I just dozed off and saw a girl sitting at the foot of my bed. I couldn't see her face, just long dark hair. She grabbed my ankle and said, 'Give me back my mattress.' I kicked at her, but she held on and hit me. It hurt. God, it felt so real." The room fell silent. I froze, my skin crawling. It had been only a minute since I thought of ghosts, and now this? The woman refused to sleep on that bed again. She dragged her blanket across the room to share with someone else, leaving the cursed mattress empty beside me. I stayed awake all night, terrified it might reach for me instead. The next morning, they switched her back to her old mattress. Things stayed quiet until my last night. By then, only 2 of us were left in the entire room, each on opposite sides. At 11 p.m., I had just fallen asleep when I felt it, a tap on my foot. My eyes shot open. The woman across the room was tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I tried to calm myself. Maybe it's nothing. But when I closed my eyes again, I saw it. A small figure, no taller than a 4-year-old child, running straight toward me from the door. Its skin was yellow, its face twisted with rage, tiny fangs glinting in the dim light. I jolted upright, drenched in sweat. It happened again the moment I closed my eyes. The child thing was right at my bed, its face inches from mine. I couldn't take it anymore. I gathered my blanket and pillow. The woman across the room asked, "What are you doing?" I forced a laugh. "Sleeping alone's boring. Mind if I join you over there?" She nodded quickly. I dragged my stuff over to her side, closer to the hallway light, and tried to stay awake. But each time I drifted off, something tapped my foot again. Over and over until 3 a.m. I convinced myself it must be my late relatives, watching over me, not wanting me to sleep. Because the alternative, that the thing with yellow skin and fangs was real, was far too terrifying. I didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, I checked out immediately, swearing never to spend another night in that hospital again. There's a county hospital in a small town in the U.S. Most locals know the front gate well. It looks ordinary enough. But if you're from out of town, you'd never guess what lies beneath it. Before the hospital was built, that land used to be a burial ground. Some graves were relocated, but many were old, unmarked, and forgotten. When construction began, workers swore the soil still held bones. Still, the county pushed forward and built the hospital anyway. Not long after it opened, strange deaths began to happen. Patients with minor injuries, broken arms, light concussions, suddenly died without clear cause. Doctors wrote blood loss or respiratory failure, but nothing added up. Over time, locals whispered that anyone entering through the front gate was cursed. I never believed those stories. Not until the night I had to rush my sister to the hospital. Her husband was out of town, so it was just the 2 of us. She was in labor, and I drove her straight to the ER. The second our car passed through the main gate, she broke into a cold sweat. Her voice turned strange, muttering nonsense, whispering in a tone that wasn't her own. "Your child is mine. Mine." Her eyes rolled back, as if invisible hands were choking her. Panicked, I shouted for help as nurses rushed in. In the ambulance bay, she gripped my wrist and whispered, There are 3 more people in the car with us. But when I turned around, the seats were empty. An hour later, the doctor came out with grim news. My sister survived, but the baby didn't. Lack of oxygen, he said. As I stepped outside, my eyes were drawn back to the hospital's front gate. Cold air rushed through me, and in that moment I finally believed the rumors. The dead buried beneath, never.